Knicks coming off of a tough home loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers, up 13 late in the third quarter, and that lead just shriveled away with Darius Garland going off, Knicks offense bogging down. But let's start with Karl-Anthony Towns, guys. Karl Towns, 8 field goal attempts against Cleveland. Brendan, to you first, what did you make of Towns last night, his shots, where they came from, how he looked in the offense?
Well, I think when you're looking at Towns so far in the 3 games, he's taking less than 10 shots a game. And he didn't play a ton in that opening night game at Boston. But that being said, you look at what happened last night, where Bridges got a lot more looks, Hart got some more looks. This is going to be a little bit of an interesting scenario for the starting group. For Jalen Brunson, you got to kind of figure he's looking for Towns first, but Bridges, Anunoby, and Hart will also all want to get shots. And you look at a game like Friday night against Indiana, you know, the starting lineup was fantastic. 4 guys got tons of shots, but usually in the NBA, it's only 3 guys who can get a lot of attempts on any given night.
CP, alarming to you to see 8 attempts from Karl Towns against Cleveland?
No, not in the third game of the season. This is going to take some time for this Knicks team to figure each other out, gain some chemistry, get healthy as well. Just as Brendan said, this is new territory for the Knicks. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns came from Minnesota, where it was between him and Anthony Edwards who got the bulk of the offensive load. But on any given night with the Knicks, it can go from Brunson to Towns to Bridges or maybe even OG Anunoby. But one thing's for sure is that when you look at Jalen Brunson's passes last night, and shout out to Alan Hahn for this, 6 of his 54 passes went to Karl-Anthony Towns. That's way too little. We need to see more of a 2-man game between those 2 guys. And what Towns is bringing as a potential 3-point shooter, we have to understand that he needs to be set up more often than not. You're going from Julius Randle, who at his assisted rate was in the 50s to maybe high 60s to Karl-Anthony Towns, who's in the high 60s to high 70s. So he needs to be set up more. You need to see a bit more cohesiveness with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, and that's for Tom Thibodeau to figure out.
Hey, you know what? You got a story on SNY.TV if you want to check it out. You got Jalen Brunson's reaction to Towns' shots, and he said, I thought the right things. He said, it's on me, it's on us to make sure that everybody eats. So he said the right thing there, and I agree with you guys. It's early on. These guys are working out the kinks, getting used to playing with one another. But a big part of this season, Brendan, will be that Towns-Brunson pick and roll. What have you seen from it so far, and what are defenses doing against it that's worked and maybe hasn't worked?
Well, I think defensively, the Knicks have already seen a couple of different things against that. Now, what have they seen the most that's worked against them the most is probably the switching that Cleveland did a lot of last night. You saw that in the Boston game on opening night, where they generally switch in a lot of different ways. So what does that make it all come down to? What happened in the game last night? Well, Jared Allen ended up on Brunson quite a bit. And he would play back off him, and Jalen would pick a side, left or right, to try to attack him. And I think that Jalen got some decent shots in the paint. But in general terms, he was really having to work hard on trying to, negotiate a 7-foot guy. The other part to that we've seen in the first 3 games is that when Towns draws a switch, what exactly is he doing? Because he's one of the only Knick players right now not to be shooting very well from 2-point range. And that's the back end of what you're getting. If a guard switches onto a pick and pop with Towns, and then Towns is forced to come inside 15 feet and operate in that area, is he getting quality shots? Is he getting himself fouled? Is he getting himself to the foul line? Is he drawing other defense to get an assist? And so I think the Brunson part of this very much will work out. But in the Towns part of it, can he be more efficient taking advantage of the switch?
Yeah, it's something definitely to keep an eye on early on this season. You know, you look at Towns, you look at Brunson, such big pieces of this thing to start out. But I also want to talk about OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and specifically CP. Offensively, what have you seen from those two so far? Met your standards, left something to be desired? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, starting with Mikal Bridges, you have to love his aggressiveness, rebounding from that first half in Boston. You know, from the second half in Boston straight through, offensively, he's been there for the Knicks and shooting the ball very efficiently. He seems to like that baseline fadeaway jumper. So let's see if the Knicks continue to run some more plays for him there. Defensively, he's been very good and playing at a high level for the Knicks. OG Anunoby as well. You know, last night, Cleveland really tried at times to run him off of the three-point line. And so you're seeing OG Anunoby get into his mid-range bag. He had a nice play where they had Darius Garland switched on to him. He caught it in the post, spun in between Garland and Dean Wade and got in there for a layup. And so it was kind of unfortunate that in the fourth quarter, the offense kind of boggled down and neither one of those guys was able to really get going in the second half. And I thought that's part of where the Knicks got into a little bit of trouble.
A lot of talk after the game, CP and Brendan, about the three-point shooting. Knicks made it a point of emphasis to get these shots up night in and night out. It hasn't really happened yet. They are, I think, maybe bottom third, definitely bottom half in three-point attempts per 100 possessions. So early, though, through three games. Brendan, what's not happening that should allow the Knicks to get more three-point looks? What's limiting their attempts from there so far?
Well, I think if you look at where they were on night one and then move forward from there, it's a situation you're not going to get up necessarily a ton of three-point looks against Boston, and then against Indiana, you absolutely are not, because you can score via the two and getting to the foul line against Indiana. So that's a little bit of the math that's involved here. We've only played 3 games. I think that Cleveland's half-court defense, when it was in the half-court last night, was good. I think what CB said about, the guys on the weak side, whether they're in the arc, whether they're in the corner, they got run off the line, or they took a very rushed, hurried, weak side corner 3. And I think that's a difficult situation to start being in a groove, start being in a rhythm for that starting group. It's not like you're just going to take threes to take threes or take bad threes. Like, I don't think that's what Tibbs is looking for. So for me, I'm a little bit more concerned, not so much about the 3 as I am where they're getting to the foul line, because they're at the very, very bottom of the league at the foul line in terms of attempts. And when you have Brunson, you have Towns, and right now Hart's getting 5 free throw attempts a game, that should be a category, A, that will help your offense, B, will help set up your defense when you're coming back the other way. Because the Knicks are still having some problems with this first group when they get run back on. You saw it in the Boston game, the Indiana game, and in a key part of the Cleveland game last night.
And also, Ian, in Tom Thibodeau's press conference last night after the loss, he talked about getting enough paint touches, more drive and sprays, and he didn't see a lot of that last night in the Knicks game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that's a lot. It's going to rely on Jalen Brunson, and also when you get to the bench units, Cameron Payne, who's that backup point guard, getting some dribble penetration and then being able to spray it out to open shooters. I don't think the Knicks got enough of that last night. They are last in the NBA in three-point attempts. We talked about Karl-Anthony Towns' low shooting volume, but also the Knicks need to figure out how to get Jalen Brunson more three-point shots within rhythm off the ball, because those two guys are going to be their best three-point shooters on volume, and they need to be able to get those guys going offensively from the perimeter.